good to go.
Sure thing. Well, Kurt, thanks for coming on.
It is truly my pleasure, gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm really glad we were able to secure your spot here. That's great. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about what you do and who you represent?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Kurt Kaufman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Seed Talent. Seed Talent is the largest employee enablement platform in cannabis. We support about 1,400 dispensaries across 23 states. And when we say employee enablement, we really focus on creating a centralized environment where all of the training you need to be best in class within your role in cannabis can be found in one spot.
So when you say training for people who aren't like in the industry, what are you providing and what do brands ask of you, or what do you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually one of the things that we are trying to change the narrative on a little bit is the word training. And I know that I said training, but I think training sucks. Everybody hates sitting down and learning about stuff. What people care about, I think, is the outcomes of training, which is providing best-in-class patient and customer care, being confident in their jobs, excelling in their jobs. And so for us, training is about, how do we prepare people for what are the tasks that they have to do and really excelling in those. And so the way that we interact with companies is we work with the retailer to really aggregate all of the training that person is going to need, which generally consists of federal and state compliance training. So in Illinois, things like responsible vendor, sexual harassment, things like that. We work with the companies themselves or the dispensaries themselves to basically create any SOPs, onboarding, hopefully create an employee experience when they first start that they actually feel valued and invested in. And then on the brand side, like you were alluding to, I think one of the biggest challenges in this space is folks think they're well educated on stuff, and even if you're super well educated on cannabinoids and terpenes and plant history, the brands and the products change so frequently that more often than not, you end up getting packaging in, you read the stuff, and then you try to figure out how the hell you're going to sell it. Our goal is to create better patient and customer outcomes and experiences by making sure that the folks behind the counter, who are easily the most vital, participants in this industry, actually have the information they need to make those recommendations. And so to your question, we work with the brands to help them really articulate their story, their value prop, and put it in a really digestible way, and then tie rewards and incentives to that.
Yeah, so I think that was really well put. I will say in this industry, you will have a lot of people who think that they know everything about anything.
Yeah.
And they're confidently wrong.
Yeah.
So Seed Talent is literally a space to get informed.
Yeah.
And for those who, I guess, are having a hard time visualizing, it's essentially online modules where you're looking at slides and videos and educational material that pertains to Bebo or Miss Grass or insert whatever brand, which gives you a deeper understanding of the reasoning of the brand, why the brand is even a brand and why you should even care about it. And it teaches you things that you wouldn't think about. And then tying incentives to that is awesome. I know at our location, we try to make sure all of the staff partakes, just because it's not crappy incentives. It's cool merch, swag, samples, everything in between. So I think Seed Talent is a really cool thing, and it's crazy to meet the person behind it.
I'm flattered to even think that. Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's impossible to know all of the products we have in stock.
Yeah.
There are just so many. Yeah, a lot of customers will come in kind of asking all sorts of questions about every product, and it's just so hard to really keep up with that.
Yeah.
I know I'm constantly on a Leafly, doing Leafly, looking at reviews people may Reddit and stuff. But
100%.
Seed Talent makes it so much easier.
I mean, we definitely try. I mean, I talked to an ownership group here that has 850 SKUs on their dispensary menu. The idea of having to know everything about 850 anythings is so unrealistic. And then when we talk about, and I think one of the things I'm super passionate about is the role of the Budtender within the space is if you think about pre-legal weed, where you learned about cannabis and you tried that next thing was generally your weed dealer, and they would be hey, you try this. It was in a setting usually with a friend or whatever who had more experience and was willing to show you how to take a dab, willing to show you how to maybe not take a suppository, but some of the stuff that's out there. And I think as the advent of legalization has come on, that peer-to-peer communication that has like really fostered the growth of cannabis for 100 years is going away. And so for us, one of the reasons we call like our stores and our different groups communities is like we really want to foster like a sense of educated community and have that be really just an extension of how it's always been done, where it's like if we can educate, you can then educate your customers and your patients. Like, oh shit, I mean, at that point we have like a really viable industry. And I think that's the thing that right now is where some of the challenges in the space come in, is that lack of education, that lack of value selling, because the people aren't given the resources to even really know how to make those connections.
Yeah. I think it's funny that you bring up that peer-to-peer kind of training. And I think a lot of that coincides with the Prohibition era, if you will, because there just really wasn't a lot of access. You'd look at forums and other methods to kind of figure things out. But I just remember like ripping dabs with like the globe that you'd put on top and like the weird glass nail or the titanium nail.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, there was no temp gun to like measure, so it was literally all trial and error. But I remember to this day, shout out to Benji, literally taught me. I didn't even know what like concentrates were and how to properly do them. But that really resonated with me. And Seed Talent is like doing a good thing by like allowing that information to just be easily accessible in one space. Yeah. And then you said you guys also deal with the RVT and sexual harassment. So for those listening, you have to have those completed to work in the industry. So it really is like a convenient one-stop shop for everything you need to like thrive in this industry. That being said, what is like a bit of your background? I know we spoke a little bit about GTI and your upbringing.
Yeah, so I'll try not to go like too far throwback, but like I worked actually oddly enough for Big Tobacco first coming out of college, and I mentioned that I have a lot of cancer in my family. I'm like super anti-tobacco, but it plays into like what would become my cannabis career because I learned the science of CPG, consumer packaged goods, and then I got into the industry working for Green Thumb Industries back in 2018. Relatively early employee within the corporate office, but I was able to come in with just this kind of odd blend of like really traditional consumer packaged goods sales experience, sales training, huge investment in like me as a route salesperson. But you know, I've been a home grower for like 10 years. I like really give a shit about weed, and that combination of like traditional CPG science and like true passion for the plant wasn't super prevalent, and maybe isn't super prevalent always in the industry. And so I was at Green Thumb Industries, started on their sales team, worked kind of throughout the business. I ended up founding their wholesale and retail customer service teams. I ended up founding their internship program, which was probably one of the things I was like most proud of when I was there. And then one of the things that was just like painfully obvious was we were bringing in great folks with great transferable skills, but they like lacked the cannabis knowledge to really add value. And you know, at the time we were getting like packaging that had stuff that like factually wasn't correct. And so I founded Green Thumb's cannabis onboarding program, trained 600 or so people, and then was like, hey, there's an opportunity here that's broader than just one business. You know, if a company of this size is having so much trouble finding like trained people, like this has got to be a challenge in other spaces. And so I was really lucky to meet, you know, my co-founders. They had, you know, been around the block a few times. They're both in their 50s, and were willing to, you know, kind of support the idea. And that was really the background. But I mean, I don't know how far back you want to go. I started selling cars when I was 11 years old. Wait, yeah, I've been around.
Are you serious?
Yeah, my dad owned a car dealership, and so I don't know if I was selling cars, but I was definitely, you know, causing havoc. And then, yeah, I mean, I literally been selling stuff my whole life.
That is too funny. And honestly, that's like the aha moment is when you're literally in that room training like people. And the fact that you took that idea and actually like created something that's actually like not just in Illinois, like in other states.
Yeah, big time.
Like that's huge. So like when was Seed Talent founded? Like
3 years ago last Thursday. So June. So my original partner had, my one partner, Rana, she's been in staffing, human capital stuff for 25 years, done big stuff for like McDonald's, Allstate, Hyatt, United. She knew she wanted to get into the cannabis space, didn't know exactly how she wanted to get in. So I originally joined her with the intent of being like, hey, what are we, I'm willing to give this a shot. I don't know if I really want to do staffing. She's like, I don't really, want to necessarily do that. I'd like to find something more scalable, more, a little bit of a different angle in the space. And so we got together and just kind of brainstorming. I was like, hey, one of the biggest challenges that I had was like finding people who knew what the hell they were doing. And then, on the sales side, I actually did some of the first, I don't know if that's necessarily fair to say, but I've been told some of the first like in-store like sales training and product training when I was at GTI. I mean, we got a program going with Paul Bennett, who at the time was at MedMen, is now at PharmaCann. He was way before his time and was asking vendors to come in and do trainings. Half the vendors were like, nah, we're good. And it's just like, how do you not educate? Like, this space is so rooted in education and also so rooted in miseducation that why not take the opportunity? And so that's really what got it going. And I do want to just real quick jump back to your piece on the globe and the titanium nails, because we talk about that all the time. We're one of the things, data-driven learning, that we're doing, which is our new big marquee offering. It's focused on building bigger revenue and baskets and those things. But it's funny because when we do kickoff calls with dispensaries, selling is a dirty word in cannabis. I think salespeople, as a salesperson, generally suck because they make you feel icky and it's just a shitty experience. But where I try to change the narrative is exactly what you said, which is you're not a salesperson by suggesting other products or including recommendations. You're a guide on somebody's cannabis journey. And I use that example all the time. When I was in college, I smoked a ton of weed. And my weed dealer was like, dude, you smoke a ton of weed. Have you ever tried concentrates? And I was like, I don't even know what the hell that is. And we took a dab together, and I was like, this is going to change my life. And I remember in Madison, Wisconsin, I had to go to I will never forget, 7 different head shops to find a titanium nail in a glass dome for a 14 millimeter, little, beaker bong that I had. And that was had that person not recognized that based off of my consumption, I would be a good candidate to buy concentrates. A, he sold more concentrates after that, but B, my consumption experience got fundamentally better having this new option. So I just wanted to touch on that because it was funny you use that as an example. Yeah. I bring up that story probably twice a week.
That is too funny.
Yeah.
And that coincides so well. Those are marquee memories.
Yeah.
Or pivotal cannabis moments that I've just had in my life.
First grab bong, first dab.
Oh, yeah.
First time eating way the hell too many edibles. Those are all moments where you're yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Too fondly.
Budtenders as guides. I like that rather than salespeople.
But what?
More guides,
what else are we? And I say that I've budtended. What else are you doing behind the counter? Your job is to make people fall in love with weed and benefit from weed as much as I can tell the three of us have. And if if you approach that as that being your job every day, so much shit gets easier. And it's all the stress in this industry is full of stress, and we know that, which the oxymoron of weed and stress is so funny. Yeah. But that's been the thing for me is it's just throughout almost now 7 years, it's I love weed and I love connecting people to weed. And it's if you approach your job with that every day from budtender to C-suite, all the stress becomes just a part of what it takes to connect people to weed.
No, I completely agree. I feel like in our situation personally, New Era is one of the first 3 dispensaries to open medically. So that resonates. And I got into the industry October of 2019. So right before recreational. So that was my introduction into this industry. And the only reason I got involved in it myself was because of my experience with cannabis and how it actually benefited me. And once you see a medicinal purpose or a way to incorporate it into your own life, it's pretty astounding. And like you said, you become passionate about it, and you're not selling anything. You're essentially just recommending and guiding based off their regimen and their own experience. Because at the end of the day, these people are coming back day in and day out, so you get to see that. You get to see their growth and just, I don't know, the healing effects and the better mood. It's all correlated. I don't know. It really resonates because I feel like we get so many people. Like, I've never had the recreational experience where, like, that's someone's first introduction into the industry. And I feel like that can be a bit, I don't know, a little bit of the problem, too.
For sure.
Just because you're not really encouraged to sit down and have that kind of conversation with like, a medical patient about, hey, like, what are you feeling? And, like, maybe have you tried RSO? Or maybe it is a suppository that you may need. Like, I don't know if those other locations give that kind of experience, but for us, I feel like that's something that we've always kind of just embodied. And so having C Talent is just a way to further enhance that, to make sure you're not giving misinformation. Because I know that being on the floor, when I first got hired, I was so excited just to like start this like new journey, because I'm like, what could this lead to?
Yeah.
I'm like, what could this really lead to? So I would like sit there with a notepad and just like research just different cannabinoids, terpenes, different strains, and just like write it down. And then I'd have some coworkers just kind of ask me like, what am I doing? And I'd explain, well, they're just, I don't know, texting or
we're doing
or
whatever.
browsing, you know, whatever. So I became like really educated on the topic, and Diego noticed, and that's how like this podcast kind of you know, gained its steam. But like people would ask me on the floor about certain things, and if I had the knowledge, I would say, and if I didn't, I would also not be afraid to like say I don't know. Which
is the most powerful thing. It like people who can say I don't know, but I'll find out. Those are the people. And you know, Diego and I were talking about before. When we were just kind of getting like stuff set up, like you can do anything in this industry. I think that's like one of the things that becomes like disenfranchising for people is like, and I'll like speak direct, like people have like at the retail side, you're stuck in four walls. And I think that there's like a metaphor sometimes of being stuck in four walls that can make it like really frustrating of like when, you know, shit isn't going whatever, you know, the direction, you know, that you want. But like, look at the two of you guys, like, right? Like, no, not dissimilar to me. It's like, hey, can we do this? Yeah, cool. And then you went and did. I mean, here we are. And I think like that's like such a real message that like, you know, for people listening, it's like, do shit. Like, figure out what it is you want to do and try it. And like, literally, the worst thing that happens is you fail. And people fail at shit like every day. And that's where I think like that's one of my favorite things about working in cannabis is like, I've worked for Fortune 100 companies. I've worked for large family-owned companies, and like this industry allows you to do whatever it is that you want to do if it's like adding value. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my favorite things about what we do at C-Town is like, I love what we do, but like I was literally just some random, you know, sales rep, not to diminish that, at GTI, who was like, hey, like I care about weed, and the direction this is going is super uneducated customer conversations, people coming in, like you were saying, you know, they think they've got it all figured out. The number of people I talk to, like, oh, I've been smoking weed for 20 years. Tell me about this. Oh, I've never heard of that. You know, limonene what? You know, oh, what? And you're just like, dang, dude, like you're the person connecting the entire population of Illinois, you know, to cannabis, and you don't even give a shit enough to like open up the Seed Talent course. Mm-hmm. Like you rather text or, you know, jag around on social media. It's like, learn about this if you really give a shit. And again, obviously you can tell I'm passionate on the topic, but it's like I want people to walk into the dispensary, moms, dads, cousins, uncles, and like get the experience that I think they deserve, which is like world class. Because like I've had a lot of ups and downs in life. If I didn't have weed, like I would not be literally where I am today, but like in many respects. And it's like I think if you have like a passion and a reverence for the plant, you owe it to that thing that gives back to you, that gives that relaxation every night, that gives you that peace of mind, that keeps you from whatever XYZ thing. Like you owe it to like go all in or go work at Mariano's. And I don't mean to like, you know, shit on Mariano's, but like there's just other places where you can make more money and have less stress if you really don't give a shit. Yeah.
No, I think that's beautifully put. I mean, the worst thing you can do is literally sour someone's experience. And I know that for a lot of people, maybe their first experiences weren't the best. Maybe they weren't guided, you know, the right way. Maybe they were given a dab for their first time ever, and they never visited cannabis, and now they stumble into a dispensary and are willing to try it again. So now you have to be the right guide to ensure that that does not happen again, and that they can see like the benefits, because it's no different than you over consuming anything else. You're gonna have a terrible experience, whether it be food, alcohol, you name it. It's gonna be a shitty time. But when done in the right way and to like your benefit, you're gonna have a tremendous time, and you're gonna start to see ways that you can incorporate that to enhance your life. And that's what this is about. Like everyone in the cannabis community understands that.
Yeah.
Like it's done so much for you, just like it's done so much for us. We wouldn't be here without cannabis.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm so grateful for like what it's done for me medicinally, and then I feel so blessed for what it's done for me financially. I mean, throughout a pandemic, we were there on the front lines, like working through all of it, and even the people not on the floor, like it's a chaotic industry, but a small and tight knit one. But
for
like
better or for worse.
For better, for worse,
Yeah.
yes. But for our betterment, like everyone should be educated, and you'd be a fool not to utilize your resource. And if you are confidently wrong, you should be ashamed of yourself, because you're literally giving cannabis a bad name, and you need to do this for yourself and for the people you are serving, because the jobs that we have, like it is, people want, like whether it's at a budtender level upwards to a sales rep and beyond, like the amount of applicants is insane. Just go on LinkedIn and pull up GTI's like job listings, or any companies, like you'll see so much competition. So like really, I don't know, be grateful about the position you're in, and the fact that you're actually able to reap rewards from this plant that's disenfranchised so many people.
Yep.
And like do it the respect of actually being knowledgeable and giving back to the community and the people who come in and support and pay.
Right.
And really pay your
sometimes
checks.
pay a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's all you can do really is to get your footing, and you have to be like a budtender. That's a great way to start, and educated too.
Yeah.
Well, for some.
Yeah,
For some. But if you're like someone who has no direction really, budtender is a great way to start. And
Yeah,
what I love about
absolutely.
the industry, it's so versatile.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not just selling a product. There's also a culture that goes along with
Yeah.
it. It has to be sexy. It has to be.
It's a
good quality.
lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle. Medical side, people need it for sleep. Recreational side, everyone wants to get down on a good night. You know.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm like somewhat passionate about too is like, to your point earlier, like when you interact with real, like, and I say real, like true need medical patients, that's like in a class of its own. I'm a medical patient, have been for a long time. Like cancer folks, people with like life-threatening illnesses, I put that in almost like a class of its own. But like, I think one of the things I'd like to see to kind of like blend a little bit different is like med versus rec. Like I'm a big believer that even if you're a recreational consumer, you're still seeking out a wellness property of cannabis. And I think sometimes like we justify cannabis use from like, oh, well, it's medicinal. Oh, we can legalize it for that. Oh, we can. But like anybody who's consuming weed is looking for an altered experience of some kind. And it's like, even if it's just to like become less socially awkward so you can go to Lollapalooza and go bananas, like awesome. Like who are we to say that like one usage of cannabis is more or less than anybody else's? And I think particularly in this day and age where it's like, you know, maybe some people can't apply for a med card because they don't want to be on a list or a state registry or some of these different things. They've got a job or whatever that requires. Like, and so that is like another passion topic for me where it's just like, I think a lot of times when I hear folks talk and justify their cannabis use, it's really from like that medicinal lens. And so for me, a lot of the times I'm like, hey, yeah, medicinal for sure. They should be able to skip the line. They should be able to, pay less. I personally think it should be covered by their insurance. And regardless of why you consume weed, this is a huge tent. I want you in here, and I don't want you to feel any type of way. The reason you consume weed is because you like how it makes you feel, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good enough reason.
Right? It's like there's just so much shit out there where it's like that of all things. Why feel like you need to justify that? You know?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's hard to put it into a box, and even like the people that do think that, I don't know, like as a youngin, when I would like experiment with cannabis, it was always an intense experience.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know, I would do it so infrequent, so the tolerance was just super low.
And it was bad.
And it was just
you were like constantly, you were like, oh shit, like I'm not supposed to be doing this.
Exactly, just a paranoid like feeling. So like to, I don't know, to get older and then to have that, I don't know, moment where you're like, holy shit, cannabis can literally like heal an ailment for me. Like what it is for me is different for everyone else. Like you said, it's like that aha moment. And then you realize like, what is like the bad stigma that's like attached to this plant? Like it all seems like it's like bullshit and funny to me. Like, how can something that's been labeled so bad for so long
not be that bad?
Not be bad at all.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, that's so one of the things that we, Intro to Cannabis. I'll do a little Seed Talent shout out. Intro to Cannabis is a free course. You don't have to be in the industry. You can sign up today on seedtalent.com, and you can take over 6 hours of free cannabis foundations training. One of the courses, Intro to Cannabis, the first 2 modules are all about cannabis history with an emphasis on the impact on marginalized communities. And I think one of the things that I'm super passionate about is understanding why it was illegal. And when folks understand, like Harry Anslinger, like known racist, known ties to the KKK, verbal advocate that weed was not a problem when he was in charge of the alcohol prohibition. As soon as he's out of a job because alcohol is legal again, he changes the entire tune of everything. It's the first power or advent of the power of like film and TV with like Reefer Madness and all those things. That was funded through Harry Anslinger to drive home into like the American populace that weed was bad. And so if like you actually like follow the history of cannabis, it's like it's very clear what happened. And then some of the biggest backers of that was DuPont Corporation, who saw hemp as a major competitor to a lot of the synthetic materials that they were making. And so like weed is a very American story. Racism, capitalism, all of these different things that like encompass our country's history are so entrenched in this plant. And it's interesting with like all the challenges of the times, like as weed is starting to crest, it's like, can we and weed come out of this thing like better and shed the history and the shit and all the stuff that went wrong? But it's like that's one of the things, like when we launched that Intro to Cannabis course 3 years ago, there were a couple big educators in the national space, and then there were a few local ones. We were one of very few, I will not say the only, we were one of very few that really emphasized the history of cannabis. And it's like, as a white dude in this space, I take that responsibility very seriously, but also like generally it's like you're going to get people who are going to come in who they're going to inherently believe this is bad, but their doctor recommended, their cousin, again, getting back to the medical stuff, they're on their last chance for chemo. Finally, they're going to give it a shot. If you behind the counter can be like, hey, I know where you're coming from, but that stuff is not rooted in fact. Here's why. And go into that. That's why we include that stuff in there. And it's all free to access because, again, it's like, if you know that stuff, you can be a better ambassador. So it's like, I'm like, I just want people to like, it's because so many people have had really shitty dispensary experiences. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I hear that all the time. And it's like one of the conversations I've had with a budtender out of state, and I've started traveling more to get, we're in 23 states, as I mentioned. I said to a budtender one time, imagine if you are the last person who could help decide whether or not this person's going to fall in love with weed or not. Would you approach that conversation with that customer differently? If it was up to you to be the person who either helped them on their weed journey or they said, man, this sucked. This guy or gal or your gender non-binary said, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to give shitty customer service today. I'm not going to help. And you were the reason that person steered away from weed. How would that make you feel? And it's like, it just changes that mindset. And again, I know it's not realistic. You get hundreds of transactions a day, but it's like,
but no, that's a very real thing. You could be the one time they come into a dispensary.
Yeah. And the reason they come back.
And the reason they come back. That's the biggest thing. Is like, people will come in once. I mean, when I used to sell cars, my dad always used to say, it's easy to sell a car to a person once. It's hard to sell them their second or their third, or their cousin a car, their mom a car, their uncle a car, because that means you did such a good job that they want to come back. It's easy to screw them the first time. It's hard to keep them coming back. And so that's like when you see repeat customers at the dispensary side, like that should be a celebration. Because that means every day you guys are doing enough to keep them coming back. Yeah. And that's like That's sick, particularly with the taxes here. If somebody's keeping coming back, like, you're doing something right.
Yeah. Those were the glory days when I used to be a Budtender. Was just seeing the same people come back.
Yeah.
And then having like extended conversations that went on like weeks into months into years now at this point. Shout out to Max. Yeah, I don't know, you develop like these relationships with these people. You almost become like a therapist.
You build
as well.
You build community,
yeah.
right? Like, that's community. Like, we build each other up.
It's not just any type of retail.
Right.
Really, it's so different.
Right.
And I hate that it's labeled as like retail, because I've never gone into like a space and just kind of like, I don't know, sat there, shot the shit for 30 minutes and like, I don't know, gotten like a rundown on like what is going to enhance my life, like with these products that I'm leaving with. Like, it's a very different.
It's passion-based.
It's a passionate experience.
And I make the equivalent. So before I got in this, I like skipped a step. I was in the motorcycle industry. If you want to see equivalents of what we do, and I know there's a medicinal aspect. I know there's all these other things. We've obviously covered that. But if you want to see an equivalent retail experience, go buy a Harley Davidson. Go buy a new set of skis. Because those are people that build the lifestyle, right? Like, when you see people riding Harleys, for better or for worse, they're a certain type of person. They live the brand. They feel the brand. They've got tattoos for the brand. When they are off of work, they're on their motorcycle. When they're on the weekend, they're on their motorcycle. It's the same thing for winter sports stuff. It's like, when you buy skis, you generally don't buy them off Amazon. You go to the local ski shop. You talk to the person who rode on those skis last year, and they can talk about it. They can talk about community. They can say, well, I didn't ride on those, but my buddy did. They loved them. They love these bindings on there. Like, that's the thing it's been interesting when you watch some of the hires that happen at some of the bigger companies, is like, you'll see people come over from like Walgreens or, some of these traditional non-passion-based retail. And again, I'm not trying to shit on anybody. There's amazing folks that come in from all backgrounds, but like, the difference between people who are successful in retail leadership in this space versus not are the people who understand the nuance that if you compare the CPG science, that consumer packaged goods science, with the fact that this is a passion-based industry, those are the people who really have success. And if you're too indexed on passion, none of the right business stuff, you're not going to last. Mm-hmm. If you are too indexed on the business stuff, but you don't have the passion for the weed, like, it's not going to last. And it's that perfect blend. And I think, again, you can meet in the middle through education if you're have less experience on one side or the other.
Yeah. No, honestly, talking to you is like very inspiring. You give good analogies for things that are hard to like word, but like,
appreciate that.
Yeah. But no, you put it perfectly. The whole lifestyle thing. I've never been into a Harley store or a ski shop. It's been a while.
Fair enough.
But it makes the analogies like make sense because the people care.
And it's funny because you'll go into a Harley shop, and I say that, again, worked in the Harley or motorcycle industry for several years, visited dozens and dozens. It's like weed, right? You'll walk in, you'll talk to some dipshit who doesn't care about anything, and you'll say, this sucks. And then you'll talk to somebody who's been riding for 15 years, who builds their own engines, who loves the hell out of the space, and you go, oh my God, you're telling me that I could just enjoy the summer because I can get on this motorcycle and I can clear every single piece of garbage out of my mind and just drive, and like that sense of freedom and all that stuff. And it's like, that's the perfect analogy. It's like selling the same thing. Some person doesn't give a shit. Some person, it's their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Is that not weed?
Yeah. No, that is to a T.
Yeah, because for this, you have to be the guy who knows what to get. Because oftentimes, I kind of tell people what to get. They rely on me.
Yeah.
They ask me what's good, and my word counts for something.
Yeah.
It has to. Because if, like, other Budtenders don't know shit, I'm going to go over here, check it out. We're not a big company, so we have that going for us. We're not some corporate entity that comes out just to make money. We have that kind of clout coming after us, even though our whole point is to make sales. But like, our people know, like, what's good.
But it's like, it's the goal is to make sales, right, for any business. But at the same time, that's so much easier when you develop trust.
Yes.
With like the people, because they want to give you money, because they want to sustain your business. They want to support your company because they want to support Diego, they've had a phenomenal experience with Diego. They've seen the improvements in their lives. Like it's all connected, and I feel like that's the biggest thing to take away. Like it's like the balance, like you said. Like you passion and business both, it just has to meet in the middle. So like the recommendations are key. And if you give a shitty one and you're being dishonest or I don't know, unaware of the product you're selling just to sell, then you're doing pretty much the plant and the person you're helping a disservice.
And I think it's what's interesting is, you know, and I've sold a lot of stuff in my life. The best salespeople are people who you can trust and who have humility. And I think one of the things on like the product recommendation side is saying like, these are the things that I like. These are the things I benefit from. But your endocannabinoid system is different than mine. And so the product recommendations I'm going to make you today are not hard and fast. If you are looking for, you know, take one Tylenol before you go to bed, that's Western medicine. Go out, you know, Walgreens, they'll get you, you know, whatever you want. If you're looking to really embrace, you know, plant-based medicine, part of that is having the humility of saying, this probably will work for you, but I don't know, because your body is different than mine. And this is where some of like the sales techniques come in, is like, can you make a recommendation? And I always encourage Budtenders, like you should ask basically the same 3 questions when somebody walks out. What is your cannabis use experience? What is your cannabis experience? What products are you not open to trying? And what are you hoping to get out of today's experience or today's purchase? If you ask those 3 questions every single time, you will be able to make 2 or 3 product recommendations that will hit that person on the head. And you'll be able to provide guidance based off of what they tell you on experience of, hey, you know, don't forget if you're buying concentrates, do you have a dab rig, do you have these different things? But if you say, what is your experience? What are you not open to trying? And what are you hoping to get out of the products you buy today to every customer? You will create more efficient conversations, and you will ultimately sell more stuff. And your customer, you will set up for more success by letting them know right out of the gate, hey, the reason I'm recommending, you know, this Sativa 8th, this 1906 Go Drop, and this, you know, whatever else it may be, is because your body is different than mine. I think you will benefit from these. I've tried, you know, this, I've tried this, and I've tried this. They're all great products. Ultimately, you need to find out what works for you. You just sold that person 3 different things. You didn't screw them because you did right by them. And ultimately, when one of those things work, they'll come back and buy more and say, hey, I really like these 1906 Go Drops. What else do you recommend? Well, hey, if you can get, you know, chill and, you know, go and all these other things, you've got to have a whole regimen. Well, shit, now you've got that person buying regular. And then when the next thing comes in, right, it's like the Bettering Company launches and they've got this high-end edible or whatever it may be. Great, you've got that coming in next. But that's where I think, again, it's like slow it down. Don't force anything. And, you know, to the whole point of the conversation, guide the person like you give a shit about what the outcome is. Mm-hmm. And it's like treat them like family, right? Like if I came to you, it's like, Diego, hey, my back has been hurting, I can't sleep, what do you recommend? You wouldn't be like, hey, just take this, get out of here. It would be like, here's the 3 or 4 things I'm smoking on. Come over, we'll take a dab, we'll try this. You know, here's some, you know, balm or salve or whatever. And by the end of it, I'd be like, Diego, you're the freaking man. The retail experience, we're not totally setting up for that because a lot of times it's like speed in and out. But it's like, that's where I'm hoping we get to, and it has to be rooted in education. It has to be rooted in the humility of saying, I don't know, but let's find out together.
Yeah, and it's not just about the product; it's the regime for sure.
Yeah,
because I'd be like, for pain, and take this 10-to-1 edible, but also smoke this 1-gram joint to kind of give an extra kick.
Immediate onset, long-standing. It's like XR, immediate release for people on the pharmaceutical side. Mm-hmm. It's like you need both: acute pain, XR.
Yeah, and then just also supplement with different edibles too.
Yeah,
definitely. I know some brands are different than others.
Yeah,
I know some are fast acting. The X Bites by Grassroots.
Those are shout out Grassroots for those.
Those are something else.
Are they hidden?
Very strong.
Yeah, those are great.
Okay,
just a 10 milligram
you should
edible.
Definitely try the X Bites.
Okay, I have not tried that, but Grassroots is. I think their rebrand looks great. I think they're doing some cool stuff on that. Yeah, I think that's the fun time too in Illinois right now. Is there's so much new shit hitting the shelf where you're like, that's where you again, if you build that trust, the next time the person comes in, hey, try this that just dropped, or don't try this. It sucks.
Yeah.
And those conversations are just as important, right?
Yeah. Did you ever play Rainbow Six Siege?
I did. Yes, the early Rainbow Six games were beyond their time.
Yeah.
The best Tom Clancy games though were was it Splinter Cell?
Yeah.
Where you were like the assassin.
Yeah.
Yeah. That stuff was like way
ahead of its time. Way
You're,
ahead
like,
of its time.
coming down from the roof on like a zip line, shooting somebody halfway across the map, like factoring in the Coriolis effect of the turn of the earth, and you're like, this is 2007. What are we doing here?
What kind of strain would you think would help with gaming? Like a sativa?
I think it depends.
It does depend.
It's so
For me, it's like more like where's my headspace going into gaming? Like if I'm tired and lethargic, like high terpinolene, like Jack Herrera, something where it's like, all right, I'm gonna focus up here. But it's like if I'm coming in hot, like I want something that's gonna be more relaxing and more chill. I'm a very avid home grower. And my favorite strain that I stumbled upon, shout out Felix Vogel, if anybody knows Felix.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Brunch of Stoners and Bettering Company, which I will also shout out. It's going to be launching product here soon, and I'm very excited for their launch. But Felix gave me originally a clone of Jelly Pie. It's Grape Stomper and something else that I can't remember at the moment. It's like my favorite strain ever, and it like smells like a like peanut butter and jelly sandwich, like the grape jelly. But that's like my go-to. I always have a fair amount. I keep that strain like in constant rotation. That's probably my favorite video game strain because it's like it just like chills out that competitiveness like just enough to like not be a piece of garbage, which is an important part. Particularly when you're playing with your friends, you don't need to beat them up too bad for not advancing at the right pace.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. For me, honestly, that's such a tough question because I feel like it, like you said, it changes with the circumstance. Like if I'm looking for something uplifting, well, traditionally I prefer indicas. Like I'll preface with that. Like if I wake up, like I get showered, getting ready, first thing I do is like a dab of preferably an indica or indica hybrid leaning like strain, just to like get me balanced, which I know is like not the case for some people, but I feel like sometimes when I do a sativa dab in the morning, it's like a cup of coffee, and unless I want to feel anxiety that early, I'd much rather just relax and be focused. So I don't know. Blueberry Clementine holds a very special place in my heart. I want to say Ray Charles, but maybe only for like single player titles.
We're really getting specific. I appreciate that.
Where my reaction time doesn't have to be on par.
Yeah. That's funny.
So like Animal Crossing and Minecraft, you want something pretty creative, right?
Yeah, you got to design and build.
Yeah.
Got to design and build.
Yeah.
Pretty sick, right? Strains for video games.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, that's all.
Suggested pairings.
All right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like sorry, I love video games. If you can tell. Tales and Travels, I feel kind of with Rev's like sub brand, I feel like leans a bit into that with kind of like the lifestyle appeals, like with the back of the packaging. Like they'll say this strain is good for podcasting and video games, and this one's good for festivals and jumping into the water.
Yeah, it's like a more thoughtful way of doing effects. I mean, like Days Off is doing some of that stuff too, where it's like, what do you do on your day off?
Yeah,
if it's an adventure, this. If it's video games, this.
But I think shout out to Lex.
Yeah,
that's one of the photographers for Days Off.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I've been around the block. I know Lex. Yeah, he's been shooting stuff for years.
For years. Yeah. We're hoping to get him on this podcast at some point. We did a podcast with his partner Ponyo from D33, the content creator, who is also a great guest. But yeah, when I got the chance to meet him, we had so many similarities like in our cannabis journey that it was just like an instant click. So now anytime I see him at an event, I get super stoked. It's like seeing like a spirit brother. Kind of thing.
No, those guys are good examples too. I mean, again, we talk about Felix, like that pivot into like where he's always maintained, and he's one of my good buddies, so I will preface that I'm going to give him some shout outs, but Columbia Care to Ascend to the Bettering Company, but always kind of kept this parallel path of like how do I give back to this industry at like a greater clip? And that's like, if you guys done Brunch of Stoners yet?
Yeah, so we actually sponsored one of their events, and then we actually got the pleasure of interviewing Alana.
Yeah.
So that was actually our first in-person podcast, which
very
is
cool.
a great episode. We haven't gotten Felix on here. We 100% should.
You should.
Yeah.
He is a smart guy who's very thoughtful, and he's like another person who's just like, you know, kept kind of falling forward in like, I give a shit about this space. I'm passionate. Like, I'll take on the extra responsibility, but like kind of always knew the right time to like parlay it into the next thing. He is a very, very well-educated person and somebody I always love talking weed with.
Yeah. No, we'll get him on here.
Yeah.
And now we can bug you to get him on here too.
I'd be happy to help, and he'd be happy to plug. I mean, so they're an interesting one, and again, I'll let Felix do the speaking for it. But like, the Bettering Company is who he's working for now. They're approaching it as luxury edibles, and so everybody's like, "What the hell is luxury edible?" And again, he's going to do a better job speaking about it. But like, they saw this opportunity where everybody's trying to come in cheap. They saw this opportunity to set like a new premium, and I'm really excited. Where it's like, you know, you want something to get your partner on Valentine's Day. You want something to celebrate. You know, shout out Tim Salazar at Mocha Logan Square, which will almost always be Mocha in my mind.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever seen it like Luchagars or like any of the Canagars he does.
Yeah. So haven't arrived to our store yet, but they should be coming this week.
Okay.
So
Well, and those are like the Lobo from 1937, I think. You're talking about the
yeah.
Plus. So yes, I think it's known that I don't know how all these things work, but he does amazing Canagars. And like, so if you guys have ever done like any of the high-minded events and seen like the rose petal Canagar or any of that stuff passed around. So Tim's another dude who's like super passionate about the plant, been around the space for a long time. And like, he's been able to find opportunities. He's teaching rolling classes at, what is it, St. Lucia's, the head shop?
Yeah.
So he's teaching like rolling classes and how to make like big ass like donut, you know, joints with like a line of concentrate through the middle. And like, those are the people that like, and like all these different people where it's just like, you've been around long enough, you just see these people like parlay and pivot and add, and it's like, that's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Because that's community, right?
Yeah.
Like, to go full circle.
No, that's so cool. This Tim, did he work for Ascend?
He still works at Mocha.
So, okay, yes, 100%. I actually got the pleasure of meeting him at, I believe it was a Profess Sesh event. Or wait, no, or was it? It was the Budtender Awards is where it was.
Proudly presented by High Minded Events and Seed Talent.
Yes, yes. There was like a smoking thing on the outside.
Yep.
And I went out there with Nicole from Ascend. Shout out, Nicole.
Yep. We're getting the shout outs in left and right. I like it.
And she's like, come smoke this joint. And then she introduced me to him. And it's funny because at our company, we had someone named Tim who would roll these super joints as well. Yeah. So when I saw the joint that he rolled, it was like insane. It was massive and insane. You don't see these kind of joints anywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just made me think, does every dispensary company just have their own Tim?
There used to be a dude, and if this person is out there and hears this, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. There used to be a dude who would come to industry events with tie sticks. And he would like hand roll them. I don't know if you're familiar with tie sticks, but for the people in the audience, like a tie stick is like very old school. It has like a piece of bamboo that runs through it. It burns for like 2.5 hours if you do it right. And it's like tie sticks originally came back with Vietnam vets to like San Francisco. They're like super hard to find. They're super expensive if you can find them. And this dude used to roll these tie sticks and just show up at events, and the freaking thing would burn for like 2 hours.
Oh my God.
That's the kind of shit where you're like, yes, this is weed. Let's do it. Like, I don't need to get blasted in the face by some, you know, smoke sprayer. Like, I'm beyond that. But if you've got a tie stick or a Canagar or you got something dope, find me at an event because I'm down. And if it's really good, I'll probably buy one from you.
Yeah. So is the tie stick, like, it's wrapped around the bamboo, but is there no like outer?
There is, and I think, and again, I don't. There's like a leaf. There's an outer leaf and all this stuff to it, and I've never like looked into actually how to do it. I've just hit it a couple times, but yeah, it's a multi-step process, and it's got outer leaves that I think are generally weed leaves. But again, I don't want to do it misjustice.
Yeah, no, I need to get my hands on a tie stick. That is definitely pre my time, and I hope to see this person
Yeah.
at an event sometime
I can
soon.
visualize the guy, but we'll have to keep an eye out for him and do more events that are consumption friendly.
Yeah. So real quick, how did you get into cannabis? Like just initially,
Like
like
first
what,
time ever.
Yeah, like what was, like what led you to all of this?
Yeah, fair question. So, I was like kind of a straight shooter in high school. Like played a lot of sports and like as stupid as it sounds, like took like the athletic contract seriously. And so like I was the one who always drove around all this stuff. And then end of senior year, all of my friends were like very heavy, like weed smokers and all of the things. And then to be honest with you, I kind of got peer pressured into it a little bit. And thank God I did. I mean, the first time I smoked weed was in my buddy's car out of an Apple. And I was like, I don't really feel that high, but I feel off. And like, this is crazy. And then I will never forget the first time I got actually high was like a couple weeks later. I was at my buddy's house. I can picture it, who was there, where I was sitting, everything. Hit out of this gray bubbler. And I was stoned to the bone, and kind of never turned back. I mean, I was definitely not as heavy of a cannabis consumer. I played a year of college football, and like
What position?
inside linebacker.
Nice.
But I was like in better shape and not so fat. But like definitely not as heavy during that time. And then like when I was done with that, I did that up in Minnesota at a smaller school, and then transferred to Wisconsin. And then Wisconsin is in Madison is a very cannabis friendly college, and it's kind of the rest was history. But yeah, I'm like somebody like I read a lot about weed before I smoked for the first time. I'm like, is this safe? Like all of the stuff that I think people do. But I think it was because my entrance into cannabis was so late and comparatively and like so rooted in the fact that like I read so much about it that by the time I was like ready to hit the apple for the first time, I was like, okay, worst thing that happens is I'm going to fall asleep. And I think that's like one of the things with like drugs, whether you're talking psilocybin or whatever, it's like your mentals have to be in the right spot, because then everything that happens after that, you'll generally be fine unless you're just being an idiot.
Yeah.
But it's like, are the mentals where they need to be? But yeah, that was, yeah.
Did you?
Oh, I was gonna say, no, you can go on. It's like kind of off topic.
Did you ever think that you would end up working in cannabis? Like, did you ever see that as like a viable?
No. So, and it's funny because we have some seed talent bongs that we shout out Canada Devices that we give out for like engagement stuff and raffles and different things, and they're like awesome. They're like these little short ones, but they have seed talent on the side. And I was just smoking out of it with a buddy that's from my hometown. I was like, did you ever think that we would be smoking out of a bong from a company that I helped start focused in weed? And he was actually the first guy that I smoked weed with. He's still one of my best friends. He's like, no. But actually, I mean, I got into the industry, so my not to get like too serious, but I was a primary caregiver for my dad who got brain cancer. And like, again, I don't believe that you need to be in weed just for medical stuff, but I watched the devastation of like traditional medicine. I was taking him to chemo appointments, like all of the shit. My sister had epilepsy. She ended up, it's kind of a back end way into it, but ended up dying from some of the complications that go along with epilepsy. She was hit by a car, but she couldn't drive because of her epilepsy, and it's kind of this long story. My dad ended up passing, and it's just like, this shit sucks. Like traditional medicine, just like in many respects, like does not work for certain things, like particularly like anti-nausea stuff for cancer and chemo. Like if people have gone through that, like the shit sucks. And so it's like, for me, there was like, okay, there's gotta be something better. Again, I had read a lot about weed, at the time, CBG is really good for brain cancer, and really good is still being researched, but they believe CBG has like cancer reducing properties and some of those things. And so I was reading about that. And then again, 2018, this was Illinois medical program. There's like 40,000 patients in the program. I knew I wanted to stay in the Midwest. My mom and my other sister are still in Milwaukee, but I wanted to get into weed. And so it was like Michigan or Illinois. Michigan wasn't necessarily what I was looking for at the time. Illinois was closer. It's 2 hours up to Milwaukee. So I applied to a couple different positions, all the way down to like, or up, however you want to look at it, to like the CEO of GTI's like personal assistant, and like at my what would eventually be my boss's job I applied for. And I ended up taking like a relatively decent sized step back in my career to get into my first job at GTI. But it was because like I just want to be a part of it. It was like, how? And I think what you were saying earlier about like Budtender is a great spot to get in. Budtender, I want Seed Talent to be a part of helping create the role of Budtender into a career. I think you should be able to make a livable wage as a Budtender if you are better than the person standing next to you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what I mean by that is I think we should maintain that it's, you can start at $17, $20 an hour. I think that's a great entry-level position, but no different. And sometimes people don't like this analogy, but like everybody's had a great server. Like you go out to a restaurant and you have, if it's a nicer place particularly, you'll have a server and you go, holy shit, this person knows the menu. They know, where the beef's from. They know where the wine's from. They know this. You go, that is an amazing experience. That person made that experience better, right? Mm-hmm. You should be able to have a livable wage if you're that kind of server. But there also should be the person who can start at Applebee's, right? And it's like, no disrespect to Applebee's, but it's like there's different levels of that. And that's what I want to see within the Budtender role. I don't even necessarily know where I was, looping this back in on, but like that's some of the shit where it's like it's not just about that foot in. You got to have that foot in and know where you want to go, and then fight to create that infrastructure for it to be there. Because it's like one of the things we're doing with data-driven learning is which just to give like the quick spiel, data-driven learning, we can tie into the point of sale systems at the dispensary, identify employees that are underperforming in certain categories, and then automatically deliver them like additional supportive training. And the idea is if you're best in class, you shouldn't have to be pulled in and put through training that you already know how to do. But if you're demonstrating from the data that you're underperforming in certain areas, you should want to get better. Mm-hmm. And your company should supply you the resources to do that. And the challenge, and this as as a manager, is you don't always have the time to look at the data and say, John Smith is weak in this area. Let me sit down, let me coach him, let me get him on, let me check in the data. And so we've built an infrastructure that can automate that whole process. But part of the long-term goal of stuff like that is to be able to do two things: help leadership make data-driven decisions, but also help Budtenders be able to communicate up and say, hey, the data shows I'm bringing in more revenue. I can do more transactions. I have higher customer service ratings, and I deserve a path to this being a livable wage job. And I think that's one of the challenges that's going on in, some of the stuff right now, not just in Illinois, but across the country, is I genuinely believe that leadership in many, not all, there's some huge pieces of garbage out there, leadership in many companies want people to be happy in their roles. They want them to stay. They want them to create careers. But a lot of the people in higher up roles have learned their whole career how to manage through dashboards and data. Mm-hmm. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's how big business works. If I can't see it in Excel, I can't see it in the data, I can't make the decision. Mm-hmm. That's not how it should work, but that's how a lot of the stuff works. And so what we want to do with some of the stuff that we're doing is how do we really bridge that gap and help give the resources to the Budtenders who want to get better so that they don't have to pull you off the floor and have to take away the time that you have to do your other work, but we can give them the training. You can then track from a leadership perspective whether or not they improved. And then when it comes time where they're kicking ass, they'll have the data to sit down with you and say, hey, this is a business, right? I'm making you more money than these other 5 people. All I would like is instead of 20, let's move it to 23. Let's move me to 25. Let's move me to 27. Let's have that path, because I think one of the other challenges in the space is anytime you want to move up, right now you have to be promoted, right? Mm-hmm. You have to go from Budtender to AIC to assistant manager to GM. That kind of sucks because some people just like to Budtend. And like that's also okay. Like the skill set you need to be a great Budtender is not necessarily the skill set you need to be a great assistant manager or GM. And so it's shitty that, you make, 35, 40 grand as a Budtender, you make, whatever it is, 70, 80 grand as, a GM. Well, what if you were just a great Budtender? You shouldn't be able to make 60, 70 grand if you're the best Budtender in the state of Illinois? I think you should.
I completely agree. And I think that what we see, because we get a lot of Zenleaf, Cureleaf, Sunnyside former employees that come to New Era, and it's very different because a lot of those locations aren't like medical. So it's like training differently, and like you said, people kind of brought on, like I think we've heard stories of like, I don't know, the manager of like a Walgreens being brought in as like the GM, and like no disrespect to that person, like maybe they do truly love cannabis and really want to like thrive in this industry, but like what do you know about running a dispensary? Like, it is not the same as like running like a Walgreens. And I feel like we've been blessed to where we've had people essentially rise through the ranks. Like Jim from Aurora, who was a security guard who eventually...
I know Jim. Jim's a good dude.
He's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
He's literally awesome. He's one of the coolest people in this industry. I owe so much to him. Like, if you talk to anyone who knows Jim, like, they know Jim is a real one. But, like, he started off as a security guard. And now
Literally.
he was GM of Chicago and killed it, and then took on the Aurora store and is killing it there. So it's like, I don't know. We need to make it attainable, and I feel like our company has done a good job of like doing that. But one thing, like I thought that was like a consistent thing with other companies too, and I figured that it would be more easily accessible for like these bigger MSOs because there's just more positions available. And GTI feels like is one of those good partners. In the past, I've done like interviews, and like in the process, they've mentioned that like they will do an internal hire from like the store level. So it's essentially like incentivizing and showing that like there is a career path. Like if you want to make it to like the corporate level, there's a way to do that. Like there's a way to make that happen. And that doesn't always seem to be the case with other companies, which I think is a very disheartening thing for someone to like think about, right? Like you've been in the industry for like 3 or 4 years. Like I've seen so many people join the industry, get super excited and hyped, you know, attend the cool events and get the cool samples and the whole nine. And then like, they just have such a soured experience with like management or the way things are being ran, or maybe it wasn't as med-centric focused as they thought. Like, they're just more concerned about sales, like whatever it may be. Then they leave. And then they inevitably come back, but with a different company, because it's like the passion for the plant to like want to do something with it, to like actually make a career out of it. But I feel like it's not as easy as like, it's not always the easiest for some people. And like, I guess bringing it full circle, like you still see in some important positions, people get brought in from other industries. Like the alcohol industry, I feel like is a big one that I've seen, especially with like a lot of sales reps. And no disrespect to like the ones that are about the, you know, the plant and like what they believe in. But sometimes, I mean, especially in like my position, like I do a lot of the purchasing. So I get to see. And it's always like funny, like meeting someone new who's like joining the industry. Like I always like to ask what the background is. And I don't gatekeep, but like I want to like have a sense that like you actually love the plant. You know, like you've homegrown for 10 years, like you've smoked cannabis, you know, throughout your college years, like you're about this, you know, like I sense that. And like I sense that with other people, and I don't always sense that with some of the people who enter from like different industries. And that's not to say that they can't learn and get to that point, but I think it's pretty disheartening when you see the same companies doing the same mistakes over and over. Like you see turnover in these roles, and it's like you wonder why it's not working out. Well, you don't have a sense or a clue about the fucking industry. So like, why not give the opportunity to someone who's been in the trenches for 3-4 years, making you X amount of millions of dollars in like gross revenue, like alone from their transactions alone. Like I'll never forget the moment I found out I was like 2.8 million in sales in like over the course of like 2.5 years. It was absurd. But every time I did something, like I recognized like my value, because like I've getting into this industry, it was like the first time I felt like in a place where I was supposed to be, where I was like super knowledgeable and like always willing to learn
Yep.
and always excited to come. It didn't feel like a job. And so I took initiative in everything that I did, whether it was like leading everyone in sales, like leading, and this is like still having genuine interactions. Like people would like wait for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And like it just all transcended. Like it didn't feel like work, but at the same time, I still realized how much money I was making this company. And so it's always important to like put that on the table, recognize your value, and like say, hey, I've done this amount in sales over the course of whatever time. Like, here's the data to show it.
Yeah.
What is going to happen. And like Jim was always excellent about it, putting more stuff on my plate. And every time like I requested something, went to bat, and I was always met with what I wanted because I had the work ethic, the initiative, and like the numbers to show it. And like I've been fortunate enough to get into like a good position that I really enjoy, but like that should also be the case for other people. And I don't feel like that is the case. And I feel like a lot of that is gatekeeping. So like by making, I don't know, resources available and providing these outlets, and even by doing this podcast, like I never thought we'd be interviewing half the people we interview, and even on the ones that like I'm not familiar with or have never heard of, I always leave that interaction just like blown away. It's just another peek into a career that's possible within cannabis that no one may have known. Like with Ponyo, the last person we did, they essentially created their own role.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a beautiful thing, and like you mentioned this too. Like you find your niche in the market, and like you see the need, and if there's like a want and like a necessity for it, it'll get fostered and like taken on. Like Seed Talent, you're genius. You're literally a genius for this, and it's like you may not see it as genius, but it's like it's something that was apparent, right? Like this cannabis has been around in legal markets for years now, but like there's, like you said, only a few national trainers, and at that point, like we need to make it more accessible because there's more brands that are just going to enter this market.
Yeah.
So there's going to be the need to always like be educated, and you're providing that service. It is essential. Like it is not.
I appreciate that.
Well, 100%, but like there's also so much more out there that has yet to be like, I don't know, found or discovered or created. It's just inspiring hearing your story, and like we're living in a revolution, and I think that's a part of the reason. Like what you're doing, like Seed Talent is going to be huge. It is huge. It is still like it is huge, and it's only going to grow. Like when this gets federally legal and it becomes global, like you're one of the first to like provide this.
I appreciate that.
And there's going to be so many more people that are like you doing their own other thing. But like it's important to like be educated and don't be confidently wrong. And to also like showcase your worth. If you feel like you're busting your butt, go to your manager. Go to whoever. Reach out to someone from a different company who's in a position that like you want to get to, and ask. Like
humbly ask.
Humbly ask.
I think that's the right combination, right? Is how do you approach it humbly and thoughtfully and like in a way that's doesn't put people in a defensive position. I think one of the things I want to touch on with what you said is and this is not a popular opinion, but like I think the MSOs get a lot of shit. I was part of the MSOs. Many of them are our clients. I think what sometimes people don't remember in the Illinois market is when this market first started, it was a med-only market that had, a few thousand med patients. And a lot of the companies that are now the big MSOs were losing millions of dollars a year, propping up this, industry that could basically have been written off when Bruce Rauner, because it was a pilot program, he could have canceled the pilot. And so I'm not going to put myself in a position to defend anything that's happened, but I think one of the things that, the entire industry needs a little bit more humility on is recognizing how fast this industry grew and how unsustainable that growth was and how shitty things can get when things grow super fast and like get over their skis. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with some of the data that we're doing is how do we close both ends of the gap, right? Because there's so many budtenders that are exactly what you described. Amazing, passionate, showing the sales, but they're disenfranchised because they don't feel that they have an avenue to really articulate that value in a constructive way. And I think there's a lot of, and I don't mean to pick on it, but look at all these sales I brought you. Look at all these, and then what is the response going to be? Well, you were standing behind the counter. The customer, we got the customer in, right? And so it's actually like, how do we bridge that gap to show that you are actually better in comparison to your peers, and like what you're doing is unique. And so that's like one thing that I've gotten, somewhat passionate about is I think everybody's always looking for this common enemy. And I think what's happened in cannabis is the common enemy is some of these MSOs. And I think some of these MSOs are doing really stupid, really dumb, really deplorable shit. I think the vast majority of them are undereducated in certain ways, but also just have grown really, really fast. And you're talking about taking a company from 0 to $1 billion in revenue in less than 10 years. There is not an equivalent that's out there, minus maybe a handful of tech companies. Even those tech companies, they would get billion-dollar valuations, but they weren't doing $1 billion in revenue. And so that's one of the things where I love hearing, both you guys, like just like the passion, the approach, and the different things. But I always try to just find that balance between like, it's about that common North Star. And if the common North Star is best-in-class patient and customer experiences, a scalable industry where you have the right to create a career out of this. I wrote an article in MG Retailer about the professionalism of cannabis. And I think there's so many heads, old OG people who are like, oh, I'm not, professionalism of cannabis, excuse me, fuck those Chads. That's like so stupid. Because it's like, yeah, fuck the Chads, but what about the people who have business experience and those things can help you get a loan, can help you do all those other things? And that's where it's like when you talk about the hiring the manager from Walgreens, all of us came from somewhere else. And so it's like, it's less about where you came from, it's where you're trying to go. And to your point, are you approaching every day? Our chief product officer, one of the things he said, like the first couple of months working for us, is we want to be a learning organization. We want to always be learning, because the moment we think we've got it figured out, we're done. And that is how I approach every single day. And that is how I encourage everybody in this space. And that's where, again, like I love the shout out to Seed Talent. We get about 50% engagement on every course we launch. That's amazing. If you went into any other industry and you said Miller Lite, if 1 out of every 2 bartenders in the country took a training on Miller Lite, would you be stoked about it? They'd be like, abso-freaking-lutely. However, that means 50% of the people in the state don't think they need to learn anymore about X, Y, or Z. And I'm not saying you need to take it on every product. I know we put out a shit ton of trainings, but like the vast majority of the trainings, you should at least take a look at, because you're approaching it with this assumption. And so again, just like go full circle, it's like, it's how do we just get this humility where it's just like all of the shit is out, and we just say, hey, as an industry, we're not competing with any. That's the other, like, I used to say this at GTI all the time. Like, the competition comes when big alc, when big tobacco, when big pharma come. The big MSOs in the space today are a skid mark on their ass. They don't give a shit about $5 billion market caps. These companies are $100 billion, plus. I mean, legacy 200-year companies that have, lobbyists in every single corner of the country. What's happening in cannabis is child's play. And that's where I think one of the challenges right now in the industry is because of some of the regulation, the what's referred to as TAM, or total addressable market, is small. And so it's got the same people fighting over the same small amount. What we need to start realizing is that like the real competition isn't going to come until federal legalization happens. And so whether you're a budtender, whether you're a sales rep, whether you're a sales manager, whether you're a marketer, whether you're a C-suite executive, how do you every day set the train tracks on the path to the industry we want, so that by the time big alc, big tobacco, big pharma comes in, we got so much strong infrastructure, even if they want to screw us, they can't. We've built the culture, we've built the industry, we've built quality, we've trained customers, to your point earlier, to expect quality, to expect best-in-class interactions, to not expect the weeds getting dropped off by an Amazon drone, but that they get to go in and talk to John or Diego who's going to help them on their cannabis journey. If we set that expectation, that's when the walls go up for these people who come in with ill intent. And don't get me wrong, there's people who suck in our industry. There's no question about it. But I genuinely believe that the vast majority of the people took a leap of faith and said, fuck it. I want to be a part of creating something new, whether they love weed or not. I want to be a part of creating something new. And I think, and again, I know it's a little bit silly, but it's like, if we can just like let the shit go and like let the cool guy attitude from like, you know, some of the people that are out there go on both sides of the fence and just say, nobody knows shit. Why don't you tell me what you know? I'll tell you what I know. And why don't we create the best path forward? Because that's some of the best career advice I've ever gotten. Most people don't know shit. Mm-hmm. I don't know shit. You guys don't know shit. At the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, we don't know shit. So if we just start with nobody is smarter than anybody else, but we're going to work really hard, that's when the amazing stuff happens. And I'm like such a firm believer that the power of human beings got, you know, guided towards a common North Star, anything is possible. Everything that's ever happened in the world has happened because people got together and said, fuck it. We believe that we can change this. And that's the shit where I think it's like there's so much infighting. There's so much like, well, how do I get ahead? And I think there's this mentality that the pie is only so big. Mm-hmm. And so if we slice up more pieces, I'm just getting a smaller pie or smaller piece. What I think is how do we get together and say, how do we make this pie bigger? How do we say that, you know, you can keep the same percentage of the slice, but if the pie grows every year because more people are switching off of alcohol or switching off of pharmaceuticals or switching off of just feeling sad at home and smoking weed, well, shit, then it doesn't matter, right? Then there's enough for all of us to go around and everybody to make all the money. If, you know, I mean, shit, if we took all of the alcohol business and transitioned it to weed, I mean, we're all getting paid.
Yeah.
Right? So,
I love it. We haven't seen real competition yet.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Dude, I mean, when I worked at Altria, we called on 250,000 stores in every single state in the country. And it's like, those people, it's a science. When they would launch a product, I mean, they would have signage for every store mailed directly to, I mean, it's a science. We're playing games. It's like if we want to get ready for that, and this is where, you know, what does it look like, consolidation of these different things, but how do we prepare to, you know, compete with those people? And again, it's like if we have Budtenders saying every day when they walk into the job, how do I, at every individual level, interact with people saying this might be the only chance I have to turn this person on to weed? And we have people at the C-suite going, how do I build an infrastructure that supports that person's ability to turn somebody away from alcohol, away from pharmaceutical, away from just being sad and depressed to weed? And that entire infrastructure and that entire supply chain is aligned. I mean, shit.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've literally never thought about that concept. I've always thought of this notion that one day I'd be able to drive up to any gas station and ask for a pack of Marlboro marijuana, whatever, you know?
And you will be able to do that for sure.
You think? You think we'll get
Without
to that point?
Without a doubt. The question is that the weed that you want to smoke?
That is a major question. And honestly, I don't know, but I feel like these conglomerates, because like you said, these are like businesses that 100, 200 years old that have lobbyists in every state, you know, mass supporters. Do they have plans to enter the cannabis scene? Do they have like the allocated space and compliance already, and they're just waiting for federal legalization to just happen?
Yep. I mean, Constellation is in Canopy. That's one of the largest alcohol companies in the world. Look at some of the acquisitions that have happened for vapor companies in Israel. Israel is one of the leading places in the world for cannabis research. There's been some large tobacco companies that have made investments into vape device companies, vape companies that have tangential connections with weed. And tobacco and alcohol are declining categories. So, you know, those games are focused on what's referred to as market share. So when you have a declining category, you can't hope to necessarily grow your sales, right? It's every month, you know, more people are dying of tobacco, there's less people smoking. But so what you do is you focus on market share. Of the pie, do we have more than the next people? And so that's how you win, is if your market share is increasing in a declining category, that means you're taking from your competitors. What has to happen eventually is a transition away from the declining category. And so cannabis, and this is some of the, like, if you really want to get into some of the conspiracy theory on some of this stuff, is like, that's where that comes in, is like, arguments have been made in like Beard Bro Farms. If you guys follow those guys at all out of California, they have some really, really good, newsletters and literature and stuff that comes out. Former incarcerated people because of weed, really strong advocates of both legalization, but like social justice reform and whatnot. They put out something recently where it was a very interesting hypothesis, which is the MSOs today, they have lobbyists, but those lobbyists are not the A team.
Yeah.
And those, they're lobbying, doing their best. They're creating an infrastructure that sure supports what they do today, but it still sucks, right? Like if you had strong lobbyists, we would not have some of the regulations that we have today in cannabis. Mm-hmm. But the argument is being made out by the conspiracy theorists is, and I might be one of them, is that like the laws are as strict as they are to prove out the model, create a unsustainable business model for the existing operators such that the infrastructure is built, the country's educated on weed, the country has normalized weed. So many of those businesses, as we've seen over the last 6 months, are going out of business, mostly because of poor operating practices. There's been a lot of people saying it's because of the laws and regulations. That's not usually true. Those things make bad business operations worse. There's no question about that. But you can even see in Michigan got slaughtered on price compression a year before everybody else did, and the people who are still operating in Michigan have figured out how to more efficiently operate their businesses. But the conspiracy theory is that the laws suck. All of the money that's going in now is basically, paving the way for big pharma, big tobacco, big elk to then come in and buy these companies or consolidate these companies. And then they will put the lobbyists in place that put in tax regulations and things like that are actually sustainable. But somebody's got to go out and convince, both sides of the aisle, oftentimes one side more than the other, that like medical's going to be safe. And then the sky's not going to fall when rec's there. And then boom, the infrastructure set, great. Let's change the laws, let's make this a real thing. And that's what a lot of the arguments are. That's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
It is. If we don't get out in front of it and educate and recognize how much we need to educate. Monsanto is one of the biggest conglomerates that's out there. They're like seeds and agricultural stuff. If you've ever heard about like them having like patents on certain genetics of like corn, and then they'll sue the farmer next to the field because the bees took their genetics from one thing to the next. Those are the companies that are buying up some of the underlying infrastructure and some of these different things, Scott's True Green or whatever the hell like those are some of the things that are happening while people are infighting about which MSO is the worst.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're playing child's games while there's people preparing to take the whole thing away.
Yeah. That is terrifying.
But we have a chance to fix it, right?
Yeah, we do.
Like if a customer walks in and says, I'm not buying that shit, the power of the dollar. That is like your greatest, and you guys will have to let me know where we're at on time on stuff. But like the power of the dollar is something people just don't even. We even talk about employment stuff. If some of these companies that people accused of unfair labor practices and these different things couldn't find anyone to work there, they'd probably change or they'd go out of business. Mm-hmm. But people keep going to work.
Yep.
And it's like I recognize I say that from a position of privilege where it's like, well, some people need the job. They have to pay the bills. I get that. And it's not fair for me to say, well, you should just quit. But like if you withhold your labor, union stuff, or you withhold your dollar in terms of not spending on shitty product, something will change. Mm-hmm. Because either that company will go out of business or they will say, we should pay these people, we should make higher quality products, these different things. And I think one of the things is like growing high quality flower is very difficult. And I think that's something that people don't fully appreciate. To do that at scale is tough. So Marlboro will be able to do pre-rolls. Kraft will be able to do gummies and edibles and these different things. Premium flower, truly premium concentrates, vape and stuff like that, not as, there's an art to it, but like truly premium dabbables and solventless and things like that. Those are like art forms. And that's where I think, I think there's going to be a separation in the weed business between, similar to wine, where it's like you can buy Yellowtail, you can buy Franzia, you can buy that at Walmart or Binny's or wherever. But then there's the premium. And there's a difference between a $9 bag of wine and a $300 bottle of wine. And you don't need to necessarily be super rich to appreciate a $50, $75, $100 bottle of wine and not drink Franzia. You just have to be educated to know the difference and appreciate not waking up with a hangover. And I think that's going to be really the separation we're going to see in weed is, craft beer, whatever you want to make the equivalent to, where there's going to be people who really know what they're doing. They're going to sell to us. Then there's going to be, the Bud Light consumer who's going to buy the Marlboro. And that's the natural, and people use tomatoes as the analogy, right? It's like you can buy tomatoes at the supermarket that's grown by some massive conglomerate, and then you can go to the Logan Square Farmers Market and buy a tomato. And that tomato, or you can go to your buddy's house who grows it in his backyard and take his tomato. Those two tomatoes taste completely different than the tomato you get at Mariano's or Walmart. And that's the separation that's going to happen, and that's the infrastructure that already works, right? You have to be licensed, to grow and sell mass amounts of tomatoes to Mariano's. You don't have to be licensed to sell at Logan Square Farmers Market, or I don't have to be licensed to grow some tomatoes in my backyard and give them to you. So that this model already works. That's the model I'd like to see us adopt.
So when you say that actually paints kind of a way brighter picture and a future in which I'm...
Good.
100%. Yeah, we're back. I was terrified for a sec. Because literally, I envision it like there will inevitably be cultivators and craft grows that don't survive, right?
For sure. There shouldn't be, though. Or there should be. There should be people who go out of business.
Yeah, 100%. It is the natural flow of, business.
Right.
If you're creating a quality product, it will sell.
Right.
So, that is
delivered at a great value, supplied with great customer service. We've seen operators in this state who've grown a great product and not supported it with great customer service or great pricing, and they haven't done always as well.
Yes. But now you get the opportunity to take said craft grow, right? And when you think of in terms of alcohol or even even fruit or whatever it may be, you're going to get a better product just based on the location because of the soil or the humidity, the climate. It's just, but now you're going to have access to that on a grand scale. Not too grand, but this also allows maybe those smaller, more niche companies to actually charge a premium. Now you still have $65 eighths in this medical market for product that I don't think is really justified, a $65
For sure. We don't have to beat around the bush, for sure.
But now in this kind of future that we're envisioning, there is a market for that, where that $65 eighth is going to be out of this world, premium quality, like you said. But then you also have access to the $4 joint pack of mids from Marlboro, grown at that major scale.
Yep.
And honestly, that future is one that I can get behind.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, right? Even in, people talk about California prices. If you get cookies or Alien Labs out in California, that's a $65 eighth. And people wait in line. So it's that's possible. And I think what's going to be interesting too is it's if you grow undifferentiated, just shit weed, people should be paying attention to what's happening in South America. South America is going to be set up to be one of the largest distributors of bulk flower in the world. And so there's companies out in California that are trying to get massive square footage because they're anticipating that they're not going to be able to import, or there's going to be import tax. But South America's climate is the perfect grow room. Is it easier to grow weed in Colombia or Argentina or some of these places, or is it easier to grow weed in Illinois? I'm going to guess the humid climate that's almost always in the exact temperature range you want to have weed is probably going to be easier to grow large outdoor, even just shitty weed to process into vape or whatever it may be. And that's where, again, this infrastructure exists. We pretend that it doesn't. It's tomatoes.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. And honestly, quick shout out to Puerto Rico. Some of the best cannabis that I've smoked in a very long time. Bee leaf I believe was the dispensary. Phenomenal service. Like the staff there went above and beyond. Like for those who don't know, if you go to Puerto Rico, they honor reciprocity. So if you're a medical patient, you can buy flour.
I did not know that.
But the caveat is you have to pay. It's like a $25 fee to like their.
Oh, the transfer like card thing?
Yes.
Yes, I did see that.
And then if you arrive early enough, you could actually get it done same day. So a friend of mine went at like 6 in the morning, and I'd recommended this like spot to her, and she went in there. The minute they opened, they're like, by 2 o'clock, you should actually have, you know, the paper that you'll just show at each dispensary you go to. And she was able to purchase flour. But literally some of the best flour I've smoked in a very long time. And I really didn't know what to expect. I've never really heard many stories of people going to Puerto Rico and like purchasing weed in their dispensaries. But this is a future that I am hoping to see. Do you think that future is coming sooner than later? And do you think it'll be within, I don't know, our lifetime that we get to see this kind of mass transition into like a global legalization and allowing for these conglomerates to come take their slice while also allowing like these craft grows to just also make their names and become, I don't know, the Balenciagas, or sorry, terrible example. The Louis, just axe that. The Louis Vuittons and I don't know,
the premiums.
The premiums,
good, better, best.
Mm-hmm, like the Ferrari, if you will.
Yeah.
You know?
I do. I mean, I think like if I didn't have hope for this industry, my dream is to open a Chinese restaurant. I would go do that. So if I didn't have hope in like the direction of where this space is going, like my dream originally was to, you know, work in cannabis, do this stuff. You know, I'm 7 years in. I'll probably be another, you know, handful of years. But eventually, like, I want to do the next thing.
The Chinese restaurant?
Yeah. In all seriousness.
Wait, are you serious?
100%.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And
my hometown has the best Chinese restaurant in the world. Shout out Hong An Palace in Mequon, Wisconsin.
Wait, what is it called?
Hong An Palace in Mequon, Wisconsin. If you go there and you don't think they're the best egg rolls you've ever had in your life, call me and I'll Venmo you whatever you paid.
Okay.
I'm not even kidding.
I'm going to text you for the name.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
That's me with a pizza restaurant.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's like, I do have hope. And it's like, you know, I think to really take it full circle here, it's like, to me, it starts with education. Because education enables the outcomes you're looking for. And I like that starts at the individual level. And it's like, I'm a big fan of, you know, think globally, act locally, if you've ever heard that expression. And it's like, if we educate ourselves on all these other things that are happening that we've talked about today, and then you localize that to the roles and responsibilities that you have, whether it's marketing, whatever, I do believe that we can create the infrastructure. And it's like, I think, and again, not to get like overly whatever, we are at a bizarre time, like nationally, with all the shit going on politically and all the different challenges. But it's like one thing that this country seems to be somewhat united on is cannabis legalization. And it's like, let's ride that. Let's show what we can do. And it's like, to me, again, it gets back to like when you know, Joe Dipshit walks in ready to hate weed to your dispensary, are you doing the part to change that person's mind? Is the packaging they get thoughtful, you know, insightful, directive? Is the product quality they get what is going to say, wow, this is way better than I expected? When they see the big C-suite people talking on MSNBC, whatever it may be, are they seeing people that they say, that's something that gives me hope that we can do something different? And that's one of the things, like, for me, my sister is a very anti-capitalist. And if you're ever looking for a great music venue, shout out Cactus Club in Milwaukee. Go check it out. But she and I have gone back and forth where I believe that capitalism can be good. I think not much different than religion. It's the people who screw it up. And it's like, for me, one of the things that I'm passionate about with Seed Talent is I want to make money. I want to make sure that all of our employees have the opportunity to great livings, all those different things. But I want to be able to be an example, and we're not anywhere near it yet. But I want to be an example where people say, hey, that's a successful business that made money, and they always did the right thing. And that sets the tone for the industry that I want to see. And so it's a long answer. It's a little bit of a flowery answer to say, like, abso-freaking-lutely. And I believe that we can contribute. I believe you guys are contributing every day in your day-to-day stuff, but in these podcasts, the fact that we can even have an environment to talk about these things openly, to hopefully smoke some weed when we're done with this thing openly, and then like, dude, absolutely. I love this shit, and I love the challenge every single day, and I love the opportunity to fight back against the shit, because if you and I, and you know, if we're not in the room, who else is? Mm-hmm. Somebody who's not willing to fight for the thing they love. And that's the thing that like gets me excited, even when we have, holy shit, is my job frustrating sometimes. But like, I recognize what, you know, even back when I was at GTI, like if I wasn't in the room, who would have stood up for that thing? Mm-hmm. And it's not like a, you know, patting yourself on the back thing. It's like, I really give a shit about weed. And it's like, if you take every opportunity to just say like, I'm either going the direction with, and helping weed go the direction that it should, or I'm going away. I get that Seed Talent email that says XYZ training has launched. Am I clicking that button, or am I doom scrolling social media? Mm-hmm. Like that is as silly as it sounds, like that is what I think it comes down to for me, is like every day, are you doing the part to earn the right to be a part of this industry? So we talked about, like, there are people who are sitting in jail. There are people waiting to fuck this whole thing up for everybody. Like both ends, you know, all ends of the spectrum of like how negative the impact has been on weed, you know, in so many different communities, and then how many people are out there that are just ready to take that pain and suffering and all the shit that we've, you know, have paved the path for us to get here, and just, you know, take that for themselves. Well, fuck, we're the ones who can take that away from them and really set the trajectory to where this space can go, and that's the stuff that keeps me going every day.
I gotta ask, sorry, this is just something that I struggle with personally.
Yeah.
You mentioned a balance of like almost like being the person in the room to like speak up when you know that like something's wrong. What is your best advice for someone who is very passionate but struggles with maybe, I don't know, maintaining humility and like humbleness and conveying that passion for a dumb idea?
I think it gets down to like, do you care more about being right, or do you care more about the outcome? And if you care more about the outcome, you'll slow down and adjust your delivery to the way it's going to be best received. And I think what happens a lot of times is people's ego gets in the way, myself included, where it's like, I just want to be right, and I want to tell this person why they're wrong. And I think one of the things that I've learned is one of the most important things to be conscious of is how you make people feel. And if you make people feel that you can be trusted, you can be relied upon, you can be all these different things, you will be so much more successful than if you make people feel dumb. And so that's like one of the things, and I think if I'm answering the question, you know, correctly, it's like if you're in meetings, if you're in whatever, and you hear something where you're like, that's not right. Most people's reaction is to like raise their hand and kind of embarrass the person, right? Like, hey, just as a heads up, that's not how we do it here. Hey, that's not true. I've found it's a lot more effective to pull that person to the side and just say like, hey, could you help me understand X? And then listen, because listen to how they got to the conclusion, and then figure out where along the path they strayed. And then you can be like, hey, I totally get that. That actually makes so much more sense how you got to that. As a heads up, the reason that we do our patient line like this is because of X, or the reason that I recommend this product for that is because of Y. And that's where I think like I was a pain in the ass as an employee, like in a way where it's like I take some pride in it because sometimes it's good to be a pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times when I look back on stuff, I was just like, I didn't do myself any favors, because I was right, but I put people in a position where they were embarrassed because I made other people know they were wrong.
Yeah.
And I think
yes.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
And that was more about me feeling more confident in myself by being like, I'm smarter than you. I just fixed that. And it's like nobody wants to feel that way. And if you like, I'm telling you, next time that happens, slow down. And then the big thing, and this will be some of the best advice I can give ever, is we had a consultant at a company I worked at, and I was like, if you guys have ever seen like the Don Cheadle thing on consulting, where it's just like billable hours, like how do I make as much money as possible? I thought that's what this lady was going to be. She was amazing. And she taught me this concept of fear versus purpose. And I think this is actually a great way to maybe go full circle here as we get. But fear versus purpose is everybody makes every decision in their life out of either fear or purpose. And like, are you making a decision because you're afraid about getting in trouble? You're afraid of what other people think, or you are purposeful in doing that thing? And it's like, I'll give an example. That's seed talent courses. Are you fearful? Are you taking courses because you're fearful that your manager is going to come down on you, or you're not going to hit your 8-hour requirement? You'll do them, but you'll hate it, and you'll not pay attention. You won't retain anything. But if you say, you know what, I am confident in my role. I do know a lot, but I'm not embarrassed that I have more to learn. I'm going to operate with purpose, and I'm going to take these courses so when somebody walks in and asks me about this thing, I don't have to make shit up because I just know. And it's okay if, somebody else thinks I'm an idiot because I'm sitting over here taking seed talent classes while they're, jagging around or becoming the popular person. I have purpose in what I'm doing. One of the things that you can do in your life is if you ever find somebody who's doing stuff that's irrational or dumb, really think, are they doing that out of fear or purpose? And 9 times out of 10, you will figure out that they are fearful of something. They don't want people to know they're an idiot. They want, they're fearful of losing their job. They're fearful of their wife or, partner or whoever thinking less of them. And as soon as you can figure out what that fear is, don't even worry about what you're trying to accomplish. Stop. Figure out what the fear is that person's dealing with. Address the fear with them. Work with them on the fear. And then once they're over the fear, transition them into purpose. And I think that's so much of our industry today is operating out of fear. Operating in fear of not getting enough funding, of a state compliance issue, of some big MSO coming and crushing their lunch or whatever it may be. And not enough people are operating out of purpose that would make all those other things just like not that important if they had like a really, really solid North Star. And so that's like one thing that I would say is like, again, some of the best advice I got is if you're ever talking with somebody who just like, they're just not getting it, they're a pain in the ass or whatever, is stop and figure out what they're fearful of. Address that fear with them, and the rest of your relationship will change.
I love that.
That was beautiful.
Honestly, I think we're out of time because they email saying there's another person using the studio around like
perfect
8:45.
That's a good wrap.
Yeah, honestly, I just want to say that advice that resonated so well, and like that's something that I'm currently dealing with, and something that I feel like I've dealt with over the course of pretty much my entire cannabis industry, to the point where I feel like it's cost me like an opportunity. And I'm like,
I guarantee you it has.
That. Yeah.
And I don't even know you that well. Mm-hmm. I guarantee it has, because they hired somebody in. You were fearful about why weren't you put in that position? Why wasn't whatever? You acted like a, whatever. They were fearful because you let them know how much they didn't know. And then you created this just fear. Where if you got together and you said, hey, you're from Walgreens, you don't know shit. I don't know shit about what you know. I'm going to help you in the shit you don't know. You're going to help me with the shit I don't know. I'd like to be a GM. You'd like to not suck at your job. Let's do this together so we can create best-in-class patient and customer experiences. It'll change your life.
I love that. And honestly, I'm going to embody that.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you.
Thank you
for those.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys both. Like I said, I've done a lot of these podcasts, and I've done some great ones, so if somebody takes offense to this, so many of them suck. This has been such a good conversation. I appreciate you guys just letting me kind of do my thing, because I know I talk a lot. I really appreciate it.
You're good. Well, we don't know shit. We're trying.
I don't know shit either.
I know some podcast episodes, the hosts are trying to like make it seem like they know what they're talking about, so they're trying to get lots of trying to just go on, to kind of match the energy. But now, like, that's why you're here. Tell us stuff.
I don't know anything. You guys, I won't say you don't know anything, but everyone's open to learning, and this is my shit. So I just really appreciate you guys taking the time. If there's ever anything I can do for either of you, you let me know.
For sure, man.
Absolutely.
We'd love to have you on again to talk about the history of cannabis. I feel like you know a lot. It was super 100%. Interesting what you were saying.
I do.
I wanted to go right into that, but damn.
And we added someone to our team who couldn't make it today. She's super, like, she changed her schedule so that she could make it here.
Yeah.
And then she got a boot. I'm just gonna be honest. She got a boot on her car.
That happens. Welcome
and
to
she
Chicago.
Found out
Yeah.
literally. So she was devastated that she couldn't be here, and she would have loved this.
Yeah. Well, let's do it again. I'll get you set up with Felix too when you guys are ready for that.
Yes, absolutely.
And if there's other people in my network I can connect you with, let me know, because I do think that like this was a really positive conversation, and like I think like this is the shit, right? Like this is the culture. This is the community that we're trying to build.